Welcome to Metal Detecting Florida Beaches. I'm Bill Myers. I'm going to be your host and guide as we take a look at finding treasures out here on the beaches of Florida. And during the course of this video, we're going to cover things like why Florida is such a great place to metal detect, the kinds of things you can expect to find on the beach, the equipment you'll need, the best beaches to hunt, the best times of the year to hunt, and tips to always finding something on every hunt. And because we're going to be covering so much material, let's get started. In this first segment, we're going to start by taking a look at why Florida beaches are such a great place to metal detect. Here are my top 10 reasons.
Florida has more than 8,000 miles of tidal shoreline and 1,350 miles of sandy beaches. There are over 40 million tourists who visit Florida beaches every year, and a lot of them leave some treasure on the beach. There are more than 200 Spanish and pirate shipwrecks along Florida coast, and items from those shipwrecks wash in daily. With all the visitors and shipwrecks, you'll almost always find something with your metal detector in Florida. It's legal to metal detect on 95% of the public beaches in Florida, which means you have a lot of beaches to choose from. Digging treasures from the sandy beaches is a whole lot easier than digging hard dirt like you have to do up north. Florida weather is great for metal detecting year-round, and when the weather's not so great, that's when the treasures really come washing in. Florida has plenty of affordable hotels and campgrounds near the beaches, so you'll always find a place to stay. And if you should tire of metal detecting, there's always fishing, boating, shelling, shopping, seafood, sea breezes, sunsets, and scenery to keep you busy. It's Florida, baby. Sunshine, waves, surf, sand. What else could you want? Especially when there's treasure to be found.
In this segment, we'll take a look at the kinds of treasures you can expect to find out here on these beaches with your metal detector. I think once you see what you can find, you'll understand why metal detecting Florida beaches can be such a rewarding hobby. Let's take a look at some of the things I've found recently.
The one thing that I find the most of on the beaches are bottle caps and pull tabs. But this is not all bad, because bottle caps and pull tabs mean people have been there. And when people have been there, you're also going to start finding things like coins. In fact, coins are probably going to be the number one thing you find behind bottle caps and pull tabs. Most of the coins that you find will be recent dates, but a few will be quite old and some will be valuable. In addition to coins, you're also going to find trash, things like these cigarette lighters, and things like sunglasses, but some of these sunglasses can be valuable, especially if they're designer sunglasses. In addition to sunglasses, you're going to find things like car keys, keys to houses, and all kinds of other keys that people bring to the beach. You're also going to find fishing equipment, and once you see all the hooks out there, you'll see why you always want to wear shoes when you're out metal detecting. And another thing you're going to find, surprisingly, are going to be 50 caliber shells from World War II. You'll find these on the beach because during World War II they used the beaches to do target practice. Now, in addition to all this, you'll find lots and lots and lots of toys, especially toy cars, as parents and grandparents bring their children to the beach so that they can play in the sand. Now, these toy cars are pretty interesting. I probably have several hundred of them. In addition to these types of things, you're going to find lots and lots of trash. You're going to find things that you never imagined that you'll ever see on the beach, and you'll wonder how they got there, but with your metal detector, you're going to start finding those type of things. And occasionally, you're going to find some surprising things, like a cell phone or a digital camera, or like this silver flask that I found. All this leads to finding things like jewelry. And here's an earring that I found on the beach recently. And nearby, I found a sterling silver bracelet, which is pretty interesting. And then I started finding chains. And when your metal detector starts finding chains, you know you've got it tuned perfectly for finding small items on the beach. Here's another chain that I recently found. You'll also find lots of costume jewelry, and some of it valuable and some of it not so valuable, but a lot of it will be very interesting. You'll find St. Christopher medals, and here's a fake gold bracelet I found that was pretty exciting to find. And then I started finding wristwatches, and surprisingly I found quite a large number of wristwatches, and most of them are still ticking when I found one. This one had 21 little small diamonds around it, valued about $400. And this is another nice wristwatch with probably are not real diamonds, but it was a nice watch to find. It kind of gets your heart pounding when you find things like this in the sand. And when you start finding wristwatches, you're probably also going to start finding rings. Here's a little cheap piece ring. And then here's a class ring. Class rings are always fun to find because a lot of them do have gold in them. And then here's a nice little finger ring. And another little, this is a fake gold ring with fake diamonds. And this is another fake gold ring with fake diamonds. And then you start finding some other rings. This is silver. This one has two little diamond hearts on it. And this one also has little fake diamonds on it. And then this one was gold. You notice how gold doesn't tarnish in the sand. Lots of little hearts interchanged. This is a little gold nugget ring. You know, it's hard to shoot photos of these rings because they're so close up. This is two interlaced heart rings. Now you notice I have lots and lots of rings. Now rings are one of the most enjoyable things to find on the beach because you never know the value until you get it home and check on it. This one did have several nice diamonds in it. And this is another one. Unfortunately, these turned out to be fake diamonds. Now, this is a wedding band. It had some engraving on it, but I couldn't determine who owned the ring. As you can see, you'll find lots and lots of rings if you're at the right beach and the right time, and we talk about that later on in this video. But there are a lot of rings out there still to be found on most of the beaches in Florida. You just need to know where to look. But before you find those rings, you're also going to find lots and lots of trash. And in fact, I generally find 100 pieces of trash for every piece of jewelry that I dig up. And that trash can vary from things like golf balls and bottle caps and toy cars and broken pieces of aluminum and 50 caliber machine gun shells and just about everything that you can imagine. But then you'll also start to find some interesting costume jewelry, and some of that jewelry will be unique and valuable, and that leads you to the really good jewelry finds, which includes the watches and rings and other things you definitely find on the beaches of Florida. So you can see from this small sample of things I found on the beach why metal detecting beaches of Florida can be so exciting and so rewarding.
Now that you've seen the kinds of treasures that you can find out here on these Florida beaches when you're metal detecting, we need to take a look at the equipment that you're going to need. Now obviously you're going to need a metal detector, so let's start with that. When it comes to choosing a metal detector for beach hunting, you have many options. In fact, you'll find so many makes and models of metal detectors that work well on Florida beaches that choosing the right one can be confusing, especially since you'll discover some metal detectors will work better than others and some really won't work at all. So before you head to the beach, be sure you have the right metal detector. Here's how to go about choosing the right one for you. The first step is to choose what type of detector technology you want. See, there are two basic types of detector technology. The first is pulse induction, or PI. Detectors that use pulse induction technology will sound a tone on every type of metal it finds, regardless of what kind of metal it is. This means the detector will sound a signal on gold and silver and coins, but will also sound a signal for bottle caps, pull tabs, bobby pins, and iron metal trash. Sounding a tone for every bit and scrap of metal on the beach is good when detecting in areas where there's not much buried trash on the beach. But since most Florida beaches do have their fair share of bottle caps, pull tabs, bobby pins, and other trash, a PI detector will mean a lot of digging on your part. For many people, digging up trash quickly grows tiresome. The other kind of detector is the VLF multi-frequency discriminating detector. The discriminating detector has the ability to discriminate out certain types of metal, usually found in trash and unwanted items like bottle caps and bobby pins, and then let you zero in on the more valuable metals found in rings, coins, and jewelry. This usually means less time spent digging trash and more time digging valuable targets. Some discriminating detectors have LCD display screens that can show you what the detector thinks the item is and how deep it is buried before you dig. Of course, without actually digging, you'll never know how accurate the displays are, but in practice I found them to be quite reliable. For most of us, having a discriminating detector on the beach is the preferred choice, as it allows us to bypass trash and concentrate on more valuable targets. But some people don't want a detector to decide whether an item is trash or not, so they'll choose to use a pulse induction detector to find everything. Personally, I prefer a discriminating detector. After you choose the detector type, the next step is to decide whether you want a waterproof detector or not. You may be wondering why anyone would not choose a waterproof detector, especially when detecting on the beaches near the water. The main reason is simple. A waterproof detector will cost 2 to 4 times as much as a non-waterproof detector, with entry-level waterproof detectors costing around $600 and high-quality units costing over $1,000. Starting out with beach hunting, many people won't want to invest that much in a detector, especially if they don't know whether they'll stick with this hobby or not. But given a choice and having an adequate budget, most people who detect the beaches of Florida would choose a waterproof detector. Now let's look at 4 good choices for beach detectors. My first choice for an entry-level detector would be the Garrett Ace 250. The Ace 250 is a full discriminating detector, has an LCD display which shows you what you found and how deep it is, and costs around $225. As far as detector prices go, that's right at the bottom. But the quality of Ace 250 is not at the bottom. It is a great detector that works well just about anywhere, including your backyard, city parks, the deep woods, and on sandy Florida beaches. It is lightweight, packs into a small package, and can run more than 100 hours on 4 AA batteries. The Ace 250 has selectable programs for jewelry, coins, artifacts, and all metal. This means that you can press a button and zero in on the types of items that you want to find. In addition to the selectable programs, you can program your own, and you can set it to discriminate out any specific item. Being able to discriminate out specific items is useful when detecting high trash areas. For example, you could set it to not show foil liners from plastic drink boxes, which are often found on beaches. When it comes to using an Ace 250 on the beach, it is good to know that the coil on the Ace 250 is waterproof, but the control head isn't, so you don't want to get the control head wet. A rain cover for the control head is available, and having one is a very good idea, especially in Florida where ocean spray and sudden afternoon showers can affect your detector's performance. The only downside to the Ace 250 is that it tends to false, that means create false tones, when you get out in the wet sand. But this problem can be reduced by lowering the sensitivity button, but doing so you may miss a few targets at the water's edge. But for dry sand detecting, you won't find a better discriminating detector for anywhere near the $225 price of the Garrett Ace 250. If you don't live on the beaches and just want a detector that you can use on the beach when you go to Florida, but also use in your hometown, in your backyard, and parks, my recommendation would be the Garrett Ace 250. But if you're looking for the ultimate non-waterproof beach detector, the clear choice is the Minelab Sovereign GT. At a street price of around $800, the Sovereign GT costs more than 3 times as much as the Ace 250. But long-term beach hunters swear it is the deepest, most sensitive detector you can purchase for dry sand hunting. Unlike the Ace 250, the Sovereign GT does not have a LCD display, nor does it have any programs that can be set or adjusted by the user. It simply has control knobs that you can adjust for sensitivity, threshold, and volume. The Sovereign GT designates a target via tones that vary based on what the target metal is. While it doesn't have all the fancy display of the Ace 250, it outperforms the Ace 250 both on the dry and wet sand, and also does quite well in city parks and in the deep woods. For detecting on dry and wet sand, you won't find a better detector than the Sovereign GT, but again, it costs 3 times as much as the Ace 250. Moving on to waterproof detectors, you'll find that there are about 6 good quality water detectors on the market. These include detectors from Minelab, Fisher, White's, Garrett, and Tesoro. Prices of reliable waterproof detectors start at around $600 and go up to over $1,500. If you want to keep your water detector price under $1,000, a good choice would be the White's Beach Hunter 300 ID, which is waterproof down to about 25 feet. The White's Beach Hunter 300 has a list price of around $1,000 and a street price of just under $800. It is a discriminating detector and also has an all-metal mode. Like most waterproof detectors, it does not have an LCD screen and relies on a combination of lights and tones to show target ID. The Beach Hunter has a 12-inch coil which creates a wider sweep pattern and results in more and deeper targets.
Like most water detectors, the White's Beach Hunter 300 is somewhat heavy, but the control head can be belt mounted, which takes the weight off your arm and reduces arm fatigue. I have a White's Beach Hunter 300 myself and have found many valuable targets with it. With the White's Beach Hunter, I usually detect in all metal mode, and when I get a target tone, I'll flip to discriminate mode and check the light display to see if the target is worth digging. As I mentioned before, I belt mount the Beach Hunter, which makes it easy to hunt in the water or on the dry sand for hours at a time without getting arm fatigue. For the money, the Beach Hunter 300 is a good choice for any serious beach and water detector, as long as you don't plan on detecting at depths of more than 25 feet. If you're on an unlimited budget and want the ultimate beach and water detector, the choice will be the Minelab Excalibur 2. The Minelab Excalibur 2 has a retail price of $1,400 and is one of the most desired waterproof detectors on the market. It is waterproof to a depth of 250 feet and works well in dry sand, wet sand, and in the water. It works in salt water and fresh water as well. While the Excalibur 2 is highly rated and preferred by many professional treasure hunters, it does take a while to learn. There is no LCD display nor any lights to indicate what the detector has found, just tones. And learning to differentiate between the tones of the Excalibur can take quite a bit of practice. But for those that take the time to learn to use Excalibur, it rewards them with some great finds. Like most water detectors, the Excalibur is heavy, but it can be belt or shoulder mounted, which makes it easier to use for hours of hunting. I use an Excalibur detector just about every day and is definitely my favorite detector. But for the person just starting beach hunting, or for those not sure if this is a hobby for them, Minelab Excalibur is probably not the best choice. Starting out, I'd recommend the Ace 250 at $225, or for a water detector, I'd recommend a White's Beach Hunter 300. If you're like most of us who metal detect the beaches often, you'll end up with multiple detectors. I started out with the Ace 250, then added a White's Beach Hunter, then added a Minelab Sovereign GT, and finally got the Minelab Excalibur 2. This gives me the right detector for the right conditions and also means I have a spare detector for guests when they visit. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to spend a lot of money. For most people, starting out with the Ace 250 at $225 is the way to go. It is a great detector. It works well on the beaches. It works well at your home, at your grandma's house, at all the places you probably want to visit locally when you're not down on the beaches.
In addition to the metal detector, you're going to need a sand scoop. There are two types of sand scoops, and the type that you choose is going to make a huge difference in the amount of work, the amount of time it takes you to recover the treasures that you find. So let's take a look at the different kinds of sand scoops right now. When it comes to choosing a scoop for metal detecting, there are two basic kinds. There's the handheld scoop, and that's what we call the bend over scoop. And there's a long handle scoop, and we're going to start by showing you why we call this the bend over scoop. By the way, this is this kind of scoop that most people start with, and basically it is a sifter. And the way it works is when you're metal detecting, you hear a target, and with a bend over scoop, you actually have to bend over and dig. And then you shake it out, and if your target's not there, you stand back up, you do it again, bend over, shake it out, and hopefully you got the target. Didn't get it that time. And we bend over, and now we have the target. And you can see why we call this the bend over scoop is because every time you use it, you're going to have to bend over, get down on your knees, and dig through the sand. And since sometimes your targets are going to be buried a foot, or maybe a foot and a half deep, it's going to mean a lot of digging. And the reason you have to go over your target after you pull it up is that sometimes you may move the target when you use your scoop. So it means getting down, shake the scoop, go over it. Now what that means is if you're out on the beach for 2 hours and find 100 targets, you may be bending over 300 or 400 times just to dig those targets. That's why we call it the bend over scoop. Now let's look at the long handled scoop. Now this is your long handled scoop. This is a typical stainless steel long handled scoop, a 44-inch scoop with a bucket on the bottom. And you can see why it's called a long handled scoop. What's really handy is that when you're metal detecting with a long handle scoop, you find your target, take your scoop, push down with your foot, and pull it up. And then you shake it out. And if your item is not there, scoop it again. And if you're pulling up wet sand, you want to grab it with two hands and shake it like this so that you don't wear your arms out. And there's our target. Now you may have to take as many scoops as you would with a short handle scoop or a handheld scoop, but the advantage is you don't have to bend over. Now when you're digging these holes on the beach, always cover up anything you should dig. You don't want to create obstacles. You don't want to make other people on the beach mad at you. But the long handle scoop will save your knees, it'll save your back. And if you have 100 targets in an hour or 2 hours, it means doing this and shaking rather than bending over. Now my long handled scoop, I've customized it by putting an eye bolt in here. And with the eye bolt, I have this tied to my belt, and I can snap it, which means that when I metal detect, I can drag the scoop behind me, and anytime I need it, I can pull it up real quick, and that leaves my hands free for anything else I might be doing while I'm metal detecting. But another advantage of having the strap is that it gives you a fulcrum that when you dig, you can pull it back like that, so it gives you a little bit of weight. A long handle scoop like this run you about $150. The handheld scoop, like we showed earlier, run about $30. The big advantage of the handheld scoop is the price, and the price alone. You'll pay for that in bad knees and worn out backs when you use the handheld scoop. My advice, before you even go to the beach, get you a long handled scoop. Now this is a travel scoop, which means that it breaks down with these two screws, comes into a smaller part, it's easier to pack that way. When it comes to metal detecting, you're going to need a scoop, and my advice, get a long handled scoop. Now that we've covered the basic equipment you need, we probably ought to take a look at where you can buy that equipment at good prices. Let's do that now.
When it comes to finding metal detectors or metal detector supplies, one of the best places to look is on the internet. And if you go to the internet and go to Google, you can search for metal detector or a specific model of metal detector, and then click Google search. And Google will return several pages of metal detector search results. Additionally, if there are stores in your area that sell metal detectors, Google will show you those stores. And if there are stores in your area, it's always a good idea to visit those stores and give them your business if you can, if they offer the detectors you want. People who operate these stores are usually very interested in the metal detecting hobby, and they can give you good advice on the type of detector that will work well for you. Additionally, some of these stores carry used detectors, so you can get good deals on them, and they may accept your detector on trade should you decide to trade up later on. Unfortunately, most communities don't have a metal detecting store, so you end up buying either over the internet or from classified ads. Now, when you search Google for metal detectors, you'll notice that there are a number of ads for metal detector companies, and the first ad you'll see in almost all cases is Calico Detectors. Calico is the largest dealer of metal detectors in the United States, and they have a very large website listing all the items that they have. I've bought a number of detectors from Calico and have had good experience with all the detectors I've purchased. Calico accepts credit cards as well as PayPal, and that makes it easier to purchase detectors from them. They also have great prices. Calico also has a used department, and if you call them, the people who answer the phone know a lot about detectors and can help you answer any questions you might have and give you recommendations. Calico also sells metal detecting supplies and scoops and all the things you might need for your metal detecting hobby, including books and magazines and videotapes. Another place where you can purchase new metal detectors is Amazon.com. You know, Amazon sells more than books, and if you go to Amazon and search for metal detector or for a specific model of metal detector, you'll find that they're listed there. Now, when you buy from Amazon, you need to know what you want, because there's no one at Amazon that can help you. Buying at Amazon is probably not the best choice unless you know exactly what you want and are able to get the best price at Amazon. When it comes to buying new, I prefer to purchase from people who know metal detectors, which is either my local metal detector store or a company like Calico. Now, if I'm buying a used detector, what I'll almost always do is I'll search my local Craigslist first for the word metal detector, and invariably something will come up. There's probably a Craigslist in your local area, and to find it, just type Craigslist.com in your browser and then search for the word metal detector, and you'll see that they'll come up. Surprisingly, you'll find metal detectors at yard sales and other places like that. But before you buy a metal detector from a yard sale or any used metal detector, it's always a good idea to put your hands on that metal detector, try it out, make sure it actually works. Another place that I've found good results when looking for used metal detectors is in the classified ads of TreasureNet. Now, TreasureNet is a forum on the internet that is devoted to people who are interested in metal detecting and finding treasures. They have many, many great areas in the forum. They have a section specifically dedicated to beach hunting, and it's a good place to visit every day. But they also have a marketplace section full of classified ads. So when you go to classified ads, you can click for treasure-related stuff for sale. And you'll find people who treasure hunt every day who have products for sale. My experience has been the individual sellers at TreasureNet generally are people who are involved with metal detecting and are people who have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 metal detectors and want to sell an extra one. And most of these people are very honest with what they have, and they offer them at reasonable prices. Again, it helps to know what you want. The TreasureNet Classified does have a feedback section, and when people buy something, they'll post something like this, a great guy to deal with. So if you're getting ready to purchase with somebody, you can search to see if that person has sold anything in the past and find out if that person is reputable or not. The ads on TreasureNet change daily, so if you're looking for something, it's good to come here and check daily until you find what you want. And then there's always eBay. When buying metal detectors or anything else on eBay, you have to be careful because you don't know who the seller is. You have to wonder if you can trust them or if the description they're providing is accurate or not. Now, if you're only paying $5 for a book, it really won't matter. But if you're paying $500 for a used metal detector, you really have no way to know whether it's going to work or not until you receive it. Buying used electronic equipment from people that you don't know is always a risk. Now, there are some good deals on eBay, and there are legitimate dealers who sell their metal detectors on eBay at great prices. And if you can buy a metal detector like this one that includes warranty guide and free shipping and is available from a legitimate dealer at a good price, then you have a pretty good chance of getting what you want. But if you're buying a used detector from someone that doesn't have high feedback or their description seems a little shaky, you got to be careful. Personally, I prefer buying a new metal detector whenever I can, and that means going to Calico. And if I can't afford a new one, I'll ask Calico if they have a used one or a demo that they're going to offer me at a lower price, and many times they can. If I can't find it at Calico, I'll go to my local Craigslist. That way, if I find one, I can go out and visit it before I actually pay for it. If I can't find it on Craigslist, I'll search the TreasureNet forums and see if it's available there. When it comes to electronic equipment, eBay would be my last choice as far as finding and buying a used metal detector. Even though there are some good buys there, there are also some shaky people there. But as I said earlier, it all starts by going to Google and searching for metal detector or for a specific model of metal detector to see who has it and what the going price for them are. The same goes for finding things like Sand Scoop. The Sand Scoop that I showed that I use is the RTG Pro Travel Scoop. Click the search button. I'll find links that show me where those are, and I can click the link, and there's the scoop that I have. It's a stainless steel water beach scoop, and I can purchase it. In fact, that's the scoop that I have right there. So that's the great thing about using the internet and Google to do your shopping, is you can go through and find out what you want, and you can find reviews on them. So if you're looking for a review on a specific metal detector, you could type in the name of the metal detector and the word review, and you'd find reviews of that metal detector. For example, here's a site that offers reviews and comparisons of many metal detectors. So when it comes to finding metal detectors and metal detecting supplies, the internet and specifically Google is a great place to start.
In this segment, let's cover the basic use of your metal detector. We'll cover setting it up, learning to swing properly, learning to pinpoint your targets, and getting them dug with just 2 or 3 attempts. Let's take a look at that. When you get out on the beach, there are going to be a couple of things you want to do. First of all, make sure you have your metal detector and your scoop. And if your scoop is connected to your belt like mine, just snap it up and put it behind you. You want to make sure it's away from the metal detector. And then before you turn the metal detector on, make sure you're on the beach where you're going to be detecting, and hold the metal detector about 1 inch above the sand, and then turn it on. The idea here is let the auto ground balance in your detector automatically ground balance for the sand conditions that you're working on. Then once you have that, once you've got it going, and once you have it where you have the threshold sound where you can just barely hear it, you want to test your detector to make sure it works. A couple of ways to do that. The easiest way is if you have a scoop, is to touch your detector against the scoop. And it'll make a sound. Now, if you don't have a scoop, you can use a coin, drop a coin, and see if your detector works on that. The other thing you want to do is before you go out, make sure you don't have any metal in your shoes, because if you do, your detector is going to go off when you swing it by your shoe. The way that metal detectors work is that they require motion like this. So when you start detecting, you want to swing your detector slowly across the sand. You want to keep the coil parallel to the sand, and you want to be flat all the way. Now, a mistake that many people who are just beginning metal detecting make is that they'll swing wildly like this. And when you swing like that, you're actually going to be detecting just this area here, because your coil is going to be in the air over there, and it's going to be in the air over there. So you want to get in the habit of swinging like this, staying close to the ground. The other thing is that the coil itself needs to be parallel to the ground. You want it to be parallel, and you'll see that some people are detecting, they'll have it up like that. There's no way you're going to find anything when your coil is up like that. It does need to be flat to the ground. And while you're detecting, just get in the habit of watching your pattern to see how close you stay in the ground all the way through. So you want a nice slow swing. And again, you want to avoid these wild swings like that, because you're going to miss a lot of your targets. And additionally, if you swing wild like that, you're eventually going to have elbow problems as you throw your elbow way out in the air or way out behind you. So again, keep it close to the surface and do an oval pattern like that. And when you detect, take one step and do your oval pattern. And then do another one and do your oval pattern. And what you're listening for is a sound. Hear that? We've got something there. And once we know we have a target, what we'll do is we'll move over to the target till we get right on top of it. We move our detector forward and back, and there's our sound right there. We'll take our scoop and scoop up a little bit of sand, look in our scoop, and if the target's not there, we'll do it again. And I can see the target. And this time, we got the target. It's a toy car. So you'll find a lot of these on the beach. Nice toy car. When you go on the beach, be sure that you have a pouch. Put your target in the pouch. And after you found your target, run your coil over it again just to make sure there's nothing else in that pattern, because a lot of times there'll be multiple targets in the same area. For example, if that toy was here, it means a child was playing here. His mother or parents were probably sitting around somewhere nearby, and you want to detect around where they were to see if there's anything else. That's the basics of metal detecting, and that is to keep your coil close to the surface, keep the coil flat, and to swing slowly. Now the thing is, you have miles and miles and miles of beach out here. You have to do that over those miles and miles and miles of beach if you want to find things with your metal detector. If you're on the beach and you're not finding things with your detectors, it can be for a number of reasons. One, it could mean that your detector is not working properly, and that's why you want to test your detector when you get on the beach. Or two, it could mean that your headphones are not working, and you want to test your headphones. Or three, it could mean that you're just swinging wildly, that you're not even getting close to any kind of targets. Or four, it could mean you're on the wrong beach. Because if you're on the wrong beach, even with the best detector, you're not going to find anything if there's nothing there. But if you're on the beach where there are things to be found, and you follow the procedures that I showed you, you have a pretty good chance of finding things. Well, one of the complaints that I hear from people who just get started in metal detecting is they come out the beach, they put their detector on the ground, and they detect for 10 minutes and don't find anything, and they're wondering what they're doing wrong. Well, if you're doing all the things right that we talked about earlier, it's not unusual to get on the beach and not find anything in the first 10 minutes. And in fact, it's not unusual to not find a ring or a watch or something valuable in the first few weeks of detecting, because it takes a while to learn how to use your detector, to determine the tones that your detector is making, and to read the beach. And it's important to be able to read the beach to see where people have been. But if you get out here and put your hours in, and you learn how to use your detector and learn where the hot spots are, you can do pretty well. One of the first things you're going to want to do when you come back from a metal detecting hunt is to wash your detector and your coil to get the salt and sand off of it. The reason you want to do that is that salt and sand, especially salt water, can be really corrosive to your equipment, especially to the plastic and the wiring and the metal that's all your equipment is made out of. So you want to wash it down. And the way that you want to do that is you want to use a hose. But before you start, make sure that if you don't have a waterproof detector, that you put a plastic bag over the control unit so that you don't get it wet. And then use your hose and just wash the detector down to get all the sand off the front and the back of it. You also want to wash the shaft to make sure that you don't have any sand or salt water on the shaft. If you do this, your detector will last a lot longer. Some of the beaches you visit are going to have showers, outdoor showers that you can use to clean your detectors. And when those are available, those are a great idea because you can clean your detector, get the salt or sand off of it before you put it in your car, which is nice. But when you can't do that, when you get home, you do want to clean them off. The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a coil cover on your protector, and that's what this is a coil cover. And it protects the coil itself from damages you might get when you hit shells or rocks on the beach. And the coil cover is always a good idea, and if your detector doesn't have one, you'll want to get one on it. But that coil cover will collect sand inside of it, so each day when you wash your detector, you want to pull the coil cover off. And to do that, you have to grab it at a corner and pull, and you can see there's going to be some sand in here. I've already cleaned this a little bit, but you'll want to clean this every day, and you also want to wipe it off here. And to clean it off, basically use that hose again. Get that sand off. Get the sand off your coil. And if the sand is accumulated, you want to wipe it down good so that it doesn't scrape or abrade your coil when you're swinging your detector. This only takes a few moments, but it'll make your detector last a lot longer. The thing about getting sand in your coil cover is it'll cause your detector to false. What that means is that the detector actually is going to be reflecting off the sand and any other material that's inside the coil cover rather than going and finding things down the beach. So you want to make sure that coil cover stays clean. And then once you have it clean, put it back on. And that's basically all you need to do as far as taking care of the detector and the scoop after you get back from your beach hunting. Now, after you've cleaned your detector, it's always a good idea to check the charge on your battery. Now, if your detector is the type that has a battery charge indicator, check that to see what the battery charge level is. If it's low, you'll want to pull your battery off and charge it up. Now, some detectors like this one, there's not a battery charge indicator, so you have to pretty much keep track of how many hours you've used the detector. And if you've used the detector long enough that you think you need a charge, pull the battery off and give it a charge. The last thing that you want to happen is to get out on the beach and have a dead battery. And that's another reason when you go out on the beach, you want to have a spare battery with you that's fully charged. But you want to make sure that your battery is charged at the end of each day so that when you get out and get ready, your detector will be ready for you and you don't have to wait 6 to 8 hours for that battery to charge up. So after you've cleaned your detector and you've made sure the battery is charged up, you want to store your detector somewhere that it's going to be safe and out of the sun. Obviously, don't put it in your garage if it's not heated or air conditioned. And don't leave it in the backseat of your car because the high heat from the Florida sun or the high heat from any sun is going to heat up the circuit board in your detector and it can cause a problem. The best choice is to bring it inside and put it in a closet where it's going to be safe and away from any bumps and grinds and anything that might cause it to be damaged in any way. If you're going to store your detector for long term, disconnect the battery so that the battery doesn't discharge. Doing these few things, cleaning your detector after each hunt, making sure you have a charged up battery, it's going to make sure that your next hunt is going to be as successful as your last one, or hopefully more successful if you didn't find anything on your last hunt. When I go to the beach, this is pretty much how I have my equipment. What you see here is the tub that I use to put my recent finds in. It's a waterproof tub. And here I have a packing blanket that I put over my metal detecting equipment. And I do this for a couple of reasons. The packing blanket keeps the metal detecting equipment out of sight from people who might be looking in the van when I have it parked. I don't want them to take anything. And the other thing is that when it gets hot in Florida sun, this packing blanket keeps the direct sun off the sensitive equipment and keeps things pretty cool. I also have a couple other things over here. Right here I have a portable ice box. Basically it's a car refrigerator that runs on 12 volt. And I use it to take cold drinks and sandwiches and other things that I might want to take with me when I'm driving more than a few miles away from home. Some of the beaches that I visit are 100 to 200 miles away. And when I don't take the motorhome, I take my minivan, and in the van I keep things that I might need on the trip. So this is a Cooltron refrigerator, plugs into the DC port. And over there I have an extra bag of things that I take that you never know what you might need, but when you're metal detecting, the last thing you want to do is have a breakdown And you might need some of those things. Let me show you what I've got over there. This is my just in case I ever need it bag, and something I take with me every time I go out on the beach. One of the first things you see is the tide charts, which tells me where the tides are going to be on the beach that I'm going to be at the day and the hour that I'm going to be there. These are really useful. I also carry a sweat towel. If you've ever been on the beaches in Florida in summer, you know that you're going to need a sweat towel when you get back to your car. You use this to dry yourself off. I also carry a couple of snacks because you never know when you're going to be hungry. I carry some rubber waterproof gloves in case I find something that's really big and I need to dig it out with my hands. Carry extra batteries because my detectors run on batteries. It's always good to have extra batteries. Also carry plastic baggies, and a box of plastic baggies. And this is for my fines bag, or if it comes up a rain and I need something I want to waterproof real quickly, I can put a plastic bag on it. When I get out in the water, I carry a waterproof container like this that I can put around my neck so that if I find rings and important things, I can put them in this. I also carry insect repellent. You never know when you might need it, but when you need it, boy, you do need it. I carry Germ-X for hand wash because when you come back from the beach, you're probably going to want to wash your hands to get whatever you've picked up off your hands. I carry extra batteries for my different detectors. Carry shoelace because I've been on the beach before and I lost a shoelace in my shoe and had to come in because I couldn't walk on the beach without shoes. So I always carry a spare shoelace, and I carry repel insect wipes so that if these don't work, those generally do. Always carry sunscreen because when you're on the beach for many hours, you're going to need sunscreen. I use a water repellent sunscreen. It seems to last quite a long time. Also carry a battery-powered headlamp, so if I'm beach detecting at night, I have a headlamp that I can turn on so I can see what I'm finding. Carry binoculars, so if I go to an unknown or a beach I haven't been before, I can use binoculars to look up and down the beach to see if there's any place that might be good for detecting. I always carry duct tape because you never know when duct tape is going to come in handy, but generally it does come in handy. I carry lens cleaner for my glasses because the spray from the ocean and the oil from suntan lotion will tend to make your sunglasses and your reading glasses a little hard to see through, so I always carry lens cleaner. Carry afterbite, so if I get bit by a mosquito or something, I put this on and it relieves the itching. Carry an extra pair of glasses just in case. Carry a heavy-duty LCD flashlight just in case. These are extra screws that hold the shaft to the coil, and these rarely break, but if they do break, you're going to be having to come home early, so I carry these. It's only about $1 worth of screws, and it's always good to have those with you. Extra batteries, as I mentioned before, more suntan oil, extra battery for the Excalibur. This is a plate that holds the coil stable. I always carry one of those with me. I always carry a multi-tool because you never know when you might need a multi-tool. And carry a full rain poncho because I have waterproof detectors, and just because it's raining doesn't mean I have to stop. Now, if it is lightning, I'm going to stop, but if it's raining, I can just put my rain poncho on and keep detecting. Now, you don't need all this stuff, but if you're out on the beach 100 miles away from home and you run out of batteries or the screws that hold your coil to your shaft break, not having them could mean the end of the day. So I always carry this stuff with me. Maybe overkill, but it's always nice to have it and not need it than not have it and need it.
Ten things to always take on beach hunts. Number 1, a metal detector, because without a metal detector, you're not going to find any treasures. Number 2, a sand scoop, because you're going to need the scoop to dig up those treasures. Number 3, sunglasses. The sun off the ocean and the sand is awful bright, and you'll need those sunglasses to spare your eyes. Number 4, sunscreen. The sun is awful strong in Florida, and you'll burn after a few minutes out there on the beaches. Number 5, you'll need a hat to keep the sun off your head and the sweat out of your eyes. Number 6, bottled water, because you're going to sweat a lot and you're going to need to replenish that water after you metal detect. Number 7, a finds bag. You need a place to put all those treasures you're going to find, and your pocket's going to fill up pretty quickly. Number 8, Beach shoes. While it may be romantic to go barefoot, once you see the fish hooks and all the other things in the sand, you're going to want to wear shoes. Number 9, a sweat towel. No matter how dainty you are, you're going to sweat when you're out on the beaches in Florida, and it's nice to have a towel to dry off when you get back to your car. And number 10, tide charts. It's always good to know which way the tide is moving, especially if you're on a beach that has high sand walls on one side that you might get caught in if the tide comes in.
In this segment, we're going to take a look at the best beaches in Florida to metal detect on if you want to find treasure. And because there's so many beaches to cover, let's get started.
When it comes to choosing the best beaches in Florida to metal detect, it can be a daunting task. That's because with more than 1,400 miles of sandy beaches, just about any place that you put your metal detector on the beach, you have a good chance of finding something. But still, there are some beaches that are a lot better than others where you'll have a much better chance of finding treasure. We're going to look at those right now. Now what I've done is I'm using Google Earth here, and I've put a pinpoint on all the beaches that we detect. And instead of looking at all the beaches, we're going to look at 5 different general areas of Florida beaches and look at the best beaches in those 5 areas. And the areas we're going to be looking at will be in the Gulf Coast area, then down here in the Clearwater through Fort Myers area, then across the state into the Miami Beach area, and then up into the Treasure Coast area, and then up into the Daytona and Jacksonville area. Now we're going to start with the Gulf Coast, and on the Gulf Coast the first place we're going to start is Pensacola Beach. So let's zoom into Pensacola Beach. When you see Pensacola Beach from Google Earth, the very first thing you're going to notice is this long fishing pier. This fishing pier not only attracts fishermen, but it attracts lots and lots of tourists. The other thing you're going to notice about Pensacola Beach is this huge parking lot. This parking lot can hold hundreds of cars, which is good because on a typical day in the spring, summer, and early fall, there'll be thousands of people out here on Pensacola Beach. Now, the beaches at Pensacola are that sugary white sand, which means items that are dropped in the sand quickly disappear, which is ideal for treasure hunting. Additionally, the beach is lined with restaurants and bars right through here, high-rise hotels all the way up and down on both sides of the beach, including over here, and it's a prime destination for spring breakers. So starting in mid-March going until late October, you can expect many crowds on the beach. Now the only problem with that is that since it is a great beach for metal detectors, just about any time you come out here you'll see other people with metal detectors. Most of the time that we come out we'll see 4 to 5, sometimes 10 people with metal detectors right here in this area next to the pier. And the reason that they're there is that that's where most of the crowds, especially the crowds from the parking lot, congregate. And this is a good area to detect. The best times to detect this area are late in the evening after the crowds start going home or early the next morning. Now because this area is so detected right here, you may want to move down the beach. Now what we discovered was because so many detectors were concentrating right here that we had better finds down this area. In fact, right here in front of this hotel I found a nice gold class ring. And that's because a lot of the students, when they stay at these hotels, at night they'll come out on the beach and party, and then sometimes they'll leave things behind. The beach runs about 5 miles to the east and about 2 miles to the west, and there are a lot of good things to be found on this beach. However, if you get tired of fighting the crowds and the other people with metal detectors, you can go across the street and you'll find a shallow, narrow beach right along here. Now, in front of this beach are nightclubs and dance halls and places where people congregate in the evenings, and at night they come out on the beach and they'll a lot of the times leave things on the beach, and we've had good luck finding things right through here. You can see how shallow this is. If you've got a water detector, this is a good place to get into water. Now in addition to this little nightclub row right here, which extends right through here, is a park that I call Bridge Park. It's right at the bridge, right before you get to the toll booth. The toll booth is right there. And a lot of locals as well as tourists will stop here at this park, and they'll do their sunbathing and swimming here rather than fight the crowds. And when we were here, we found a few rings and a number of coins, especially quarters, right in this area. And the reason you find lots of quarters is the toll booth accepts quarters and people get in the water with their coins in their pocket. So this is one of those areas that's really nice to detect, and there aren't many detectors in this area. As you look at the entire area, you'll notice that on the western side of Pensacola Beach is Fort Pickens National Park, and you cannot detect in this area. It's illegal. If you get caught detecting, you will be arrested. And on the eastern side is the Navarre National Seashore, and you cannot detect in this area. It's the same way it's illegal to detect. But it gives you 7 miles of nice sandy beaches to detect here in the middle, plus the park on this side. And across the bridge there is another park over here that you can detect. Now, should you tire of detecting this area, or should you decide you want to go to a little bit lesser detected beach, about 40 miles away is Floribama on Perdido Key. We'll fly over to that. Floribama is on the Alabama-Florida state line. That's how it came about its name, Floribama. And there are a number of nightclubs right here on the beach. It's that white, sandy, sugary beach. And on weekends, there will be as many as 5,000 to 10,000 youths out here on the beach, and that makes it a good place to metal detect. One of the difficult things about Floribama is finding good parking in the area around the package stores and nightclubs. But if you can find those parking and you can get there when the crowds have just left, you have good chances of finding things. Now back to Pensacola Beach. When we were here, we stayed at the Hampton Inn, which is right in this area here. It's a nice hotel. It's detector friendly. You can walk right out on the beach and detect all day and all night. And there are people out on the beach at night. The only thing you have to worry about is the hurricanes in the summer, and the surf can come up, and when it does, you don't want to be in the water. But after the hurricanes leave, it's a good time to metal detect. Now, further down the road from Pensacola Beach is another white sandy beach. And that's Fort Walton Beach. And you notice that Fort Walton Beach also has a long fishing pier and a nice large parking lot. And as you begin metal detecting in Florida, you're going to learn the real value of finding a beach with a parking lot, because parking near the beaches in Florida is getting more and more difficult. So when you can find a beach with a parking lot, it means that not only you, but hundreds and sometimes thousands of other tourists can come out on those beaches. Fort Walton Beach is another spring break destination, and is a great beach to detect from about mid-March through late October. And it is a family beach except for during spring break. It's a safe place to be, and there are lots of hotels that line both sides of it. A good place to detect here is starting right here at the pier and moving down this way, and then come back to the pier and detect in this area out here. Now further down the road from Fort Walton Beach is Destin Beach. And Destin Beach is another one of those fine powdery sugar type beaches, and it also is a favorite of the spring break crowd, although it's not as rowdy here. One of the things that you'll discover about Destin Beach is that finding parking near the beach is going to be difficult. There are a lot of high-rise hotels and condos, but you better not park in those parking lots. So you want to secure your parking place first and then get out on the beach. And when you do detect in front of the hotels and the short stay condos, and also detect in front of the clubs that attract the spring breakers crowd. Now further on down the beach from Destin Beach is Panama City Beach. And the Panama City Public Beach also has a nice big parking lot and a fishing pier. And you'll notice the sands here are not quite as powdery or sugary as the sands up north. That's because a lot of the sands in this area have been renourished due to the removal of the sands by hurricanes. But since Panama City Beach is such a prime destination for spring breakers and tourists and fun seekers, it's a great place to metal detect. There are a lot of places to metal detect. A little bit difficult in finding parking. And what we eventually had to do is check into a motel room so that we would have dedicated parking and then walk out on the beach. Now the Panama City Public Beach is not a bad area, but a better area seems to be the hotels in front of what they call the Miracle Mile Beach. And you can see these high-rise hotels through here. And we stayed at one of these, and you can get out and walk miles in either direction and always find things. Now you probably don't want to stay here during the spring break because it is a little rowdy, but right after spring break is a great time to be here. Now let's do an overview of the Gulf of Coast beaches that we've just looked at. You can see that there are a number of beaches, starting with the Floribama Beach, Pensacola Beach, Fort Walton Beach, Destin Beach, Panama City Beach, and there are a number of smaller beaches between here that are also good for metal detecting as well. Now that we've looked at the Gulf Coast beaches, let's check out the beaches on the southwest coast. On the southwest coast, you'll find beaches that include Clearwater, Sand Key, St. Pete Beach, Siesta Key, as well as a number of smaller beaches between those. And what we're going to look at first is going to be the Clearwater Public Beach. Let's zoom into that. The Clearwater Public Beach is one of those beaches that is world famous, and it will have lots and lots of visitors. You'll notice it also has a fishing pier, and this fishing pier is primarily a tourist pier. There's not much fishing going on, lots of tourists on it. You'll also notice a large parking lot. However, this parking lot fills up early, and it's expensive to park there. This is a public parking lot, and there are some parking off-street, but you have to be careful because if you park in the illegal zone, you will be towed away. Clearwater Public Beach attracts thousands of people in the summertime, in the fall, in the winter, and also in the spring. In fact, this entire area of Florida, the southwest coast, is where all the snowbirds come. So this is actually a four-season detecting area. So while it may be cold up north, you can come down here in the dead of winter, December and January, and typically have good finds out on the beach. When we detected here, we detected on both sides of this fishing pier large crowds of people through here. We detected out in the water and found some finds around the fishing pier. We also found finds up here. We actually found finds all over the beach. It was easy to find things on the beach. However, because it is such a popular beach, there are a lot of people with metal detectors who detect this beach. And probably the most difficult part is finding a place to park because, like I say, the park fills up quickly. But the Clearwater Beach is a great place to metal detect. It's one of the favorite places that you can go to find high-end items in the water. Now, if you find that parking is difficult here, or if you just don't want to fight the crowds because of all of these high-rise hotels and because it's such a tourist destination, you can drive just a couple of miles south to the Sand Key County Park. And you notice this is just down the road, across the inlet here, and this is the Sand Key County Park. And look at all this parking, tremendous amount of parking, and there'll be lots of crowds here. Crowds won't be as wild as it is in Clearwater Beach, but you have a lot of beach area to detect, and we found many items in this area through here. Again, this is a county park. It's easy to get to. Parking is free. You want to get there early in the morning or late in the evening in order to secure a parking place, because when Clearwater Beach fills up, this beach also fills up. This area through here is a good area to detect. And about right here is where the hotels and condos start. And if you keep on going down this direction, you'll find some areas that are good to detect, but there are a lot of people who live here full time, and the beaches in front of their houses won't be as good as it will be on the tourist beaches. Now, further south, we can go to St. Pete Beach. The St. Pete Beach is a world famous beach, and it has a lot of very, very upscale hotels. And a lot of the people spend much of their time out on the beach. The only problem you're going to have at St. Pete Beach is finding a place to park. Now, there are a few public places to park, but they fill up early with the people who know where they are. The good thing is that because there are so few places to park, these beaches aren't detected much. So if you do find a place to park and you do get out, especially in front of these big hotels where they have large numbers of people come and go over the weekend, you have a much better chance of finding something. Our experience is we ended up spending almost 2 hours finding a place to park, and then once we got out on the beach, we really didn't have time to spend a lot of time on the beach. We did find a few interesting items, but we were disappointed with the parking. Now, further on south, there's another world-famous beach, and that's the Siesta Key Beach right outside of Sarasota. And Siesta Key Beach has a large parking lot, and again, it fills up early in the morning and stays full until late in the afternoon, but you can still find parking if you get here at 10 to 11 o'clock. And in this area over here, they even have parking for RVs. And we were traveling in RVs, so we were able to park here and spend all day detecting. Siesta Key Beach is another one of those white powdery sand beaches, and there'll be crowds here year-round, even in the dead of winter, and it's a good beach to metal detect. The problem is a lot of people know that it's a good beach to metal detect, so it's not uncommon to see 4 or 5, sometimes 6 other people out on the beach metal detecting at the same time. Now, we found some of our best finds in the water out here. There's a sandbar about right here, and if you detect at low tide, if you can get in the water on this side of the sandbar, you have a pretty good chance of finding things. But we also found things in this area right through here. Now, because the sand is so fine, it tends to pack harder, which means digging is a little bit more difficult in here than in some other beaches. And the other problem we found is since most of the tourists are young in this area, there seems to be a lot more trash, foil wrappers and such throughout the beach. But there are a lot of beach to detect, and we found jewelry in this area right through here. We found a watch in this area right here, and found other items right through here. In the late spring, summer, and early fall, you'll find most of your items close to the water. In winter, where the winds may be a little bit colder, you'll find most of your items through here, and you'll even find items up around here because when it gets really cold, the snowbirds tend to get in this area here because it's protected from the north winds. So looking at the West Coast beaches again, we'll do an overview of all of them. Starting up here with Clearwater Public Beach, you can see that we have a number of beaches that you can visit. And a number of these beaches are easy to get to, and will have easier parking than some of the others. Fort DeSoto is a state park where you can camp in your motorhome, but if you're going to detect there, you have to ask for permission. They do allow it, but only if you ask for permission first. Bradenton Beach is a nice beach. Lido Park is a very large beach, but it's mostly deserted, and you can spend a lot of time there and not find much. Nokomis is a nice beach. Inglewood's a nice beach. Fort Myers Beach is pretty good. Naples Beach is pretty good. Parking is a little bit more difficult down there. Next, we'll go over and look at the beaches on the other side of the state. Now that we've looked at the beaches on the southwest coast of Florida, let's look at the beaches in the Miami area. Driving from Sarasota to Miami is about a 4.5-hour drive. It's an easy drive, and you get to drive through the Alligator Alley and the Everglades, which makes it even more interesting. Let's go over there and check out the beaches now. As you can see, there's a large number of beaches over near Miami. The big draw of Miami is that Miami gets millions of tourists a year, and many of those people spend their time out on the beaches. And those are the upscale, trendy folks who do wear jewelry out on the beach, and a lot of times you'll find that jewelry. Plus, you have the advantage of being able to find some of the treasure that may wash in from shipwrecks of hundreds of years ago. Now, the big problem with the Miami Beach area is parking and crime. And unfortunately, because Miami Beach has so many visitors and has so many people living there, when you park your car, you want to make sure that there's no valuables in your car, because there is a chance your car would be broken into. And the other problem is just finding a place to park. Because of the number of people who visit Miami Beach on a daily basis, finding a place to park can be very, very difficult. Now, this can be solved if you're staying at a hotel near the beach or on the beach. You can just park there and walk out onto the beach with your metal detector. But if you're just visiting for the day, or if you're staying miles away, it can be difficult. I have a friend who detects Miami Beach regularly, and what he does, he parks his car about 4 miles away and takes a city bus to the beach with his metal detector, detects on the beach all day, and then takes a city bus back to his car. Now, when it comes to choosing the best beaches around Miami Beach, you have the world-famous South Beach area, which is down here. And a little bit further south, you have the South Beach Park, which does have public parking. A little bit easier to park there, but it can be a pretty good hike from there up until the South Beach area of Miami. And then this entire area through here, on all these parks, can be good for metal detecting because all these parks do draw a crowd. Because of the southern position of Miami, Miami generally has large crowds of their beaches year-round. This is especially true in the winter when the snowbirds are here and the Europeans are on the beaches. Now, some of the beaches in Miami are going to be topless, and if that bothers you, be sure to avoid those beaches. Most of those are going to be around the South Beach area. The types of things you're likely to find on the Miami beaches are going to be lots of coins, lots of jewelry, and occasionally some high-end jewelry. And when you're detecting the Miami beaches, it is best to detect with a partner, especially if you're there late in the day or very early in the morning. Not that there's a lot of crime on the beaches, but a person with a metal detector that appears to have found a gold ring could be a target. So it's a good idea to detect with a partner when you're in the Miami Beach area. But the beaches are great, the weather is great, the water temperature is almost warm enough to swim year-round, and that means there are lots of things there to be found. We'll do a zoom in on some of these beaches so you can get a better idea what they look like. Down here in South Beach, and this is the world-famous South Beach area. You can tell by the overhead photo that the beach is wide, that there are a lot of umbrellas set up, that they get a lot of visitors. There's a boardwalk here where a lot of people walk. There are boardwalks that run for miles from the major hotels all the way down to South Beach. Lots of visitors here. But as you can see, there aren't many parking lots. In fact, if you look through this area, you won't see many parking lots at all. There are a few in this area through here. These parking spaces will almost always be filled. We can move up a little bit to the 36th Street Park. And the people who detect this area on a daily basis tell me this is one of the best places to park, and it's also one of the best places to metal detect. And that's simply because there is parking there. You can see there's parking here and there's parking there. And then once you get on the beach, you can move in either direction and you have a pretty good chance of finding something. Then we'll go up further north of Miami. There is Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale attracts a large crowd year-round. It gets a very large spring break crowd. And one good thing about Fort Lauderdale, especially the South Beach Park, is you can see here there's lots of parking available. And as I mentioned earlier, parking is one of those things that it's difficult to metal detect if you can't find a place to park your car and get out. So you want to look for those beaches where parking is available and where you don't have to pay too much to park. And the other thing is, anytime you park in Florida, try to find a tree that you can park under, because it gets hot in the summertime and the heat can damage any electronics that you may have in your car. As I mentioned earlier, the South Beach Park in Fort Lauderdale attracts a large spring break crowd. It also attracts a boating crowd. It also attracts the overflow crowd from Miami. The beaches here aren't quite as sugary soft as they are in other parts of the state, but they are very popular and great for metal detecting. Now, there are a lot more beaches than we've talked about. In fact, let's pull back and look at some of the beaches that we may have missed. Starting down here at Key Biscayne Beach, which is a nice big wide beach, but it does cost about $8 a day to park there. You have a number of beaches running all the way up to Fort Lauderdale and even Lauderdale by the Sea, which has a fishing pier. And all these beaches can be excellent beaches for finding current drops, jewelry, coins, and in some cases you can find ancient coins. So if you're in this area, this is a good area to detect, and it's a year-round detecting area. In the next segment, we're going to go up and look at the Treasure Coast beaches. In the previous section, we looked at the Miami area beaches. In this section, we're going to go north up the coast to the Treasure Beach area. Let's jump up there and see what we have. These are the Treasure Coast beaches, and the reason they're referred to as Treasure Coast beaches because back in 1715, 11 Spanish ships, possibly more, sank right off the coast here. These ships were carrying hundreds of thousands of gold and silver coins and personal treasures from South America going to Spain. And they got caught up in a hurricane. The hurricane sunk most of the ships a quarter mile to a half mile offshore. Most of that treasure was lost and continues to wash ashore today. Additionally, many other ships following the route from South America to Europe have also wrecked in this area. So there are a lot of wrecks out there, and there's lots of chances of finding treasure on these beaches. Now, when we visit these beaches, we typically start by camping out at Sebastian Inlet State Park. And the state park is at the north side of the Treasure Coast. And it's a really nice state park and has plenty of camping area right here. Now, if this state park is full, which it typically is, there's a county park right across the inlet here. It's called Long Point Park. And it also has a number of RV and normal camping, and you can camp there. The good thing about camping at Sebastian Inlet State Park is that the Sebastian Inlet Beach, which you can metal detect on, is a long, wide open beach. And it's great for detecting, although you have to get here at the right time.
Typically, during most of the year, this beach will be sanded in, and that's because the offshore winds will pile the sand up on the beach, which means the original beach is going to be 2 to 4, even 8 feet deep of sand, which means you're not going to find much treasure here. But if you visit the Treasure Coast beaches right after a major storm or a hurricane, your chances of finding treasure go up tremendously. Now, while you're at the Treasure Coast, one of the places you're probably going to want to visit is the McClarty Museum. McClarty Museum is the location of the survivors camp of those 1,500 people that survived the Spanish fleet wreck of 1715. And they set up here on this beach and marched toward St. Augustine or moved back inland and buried some of their treasures. The museum itself has many interesting exhibits of some of the things that have been found on the beach, and also dioramas showing what the lifestyle was back there. If you visit the museum, be sure to flip through the loose leaf binder they have on the front desk to show what people have found on the beaches recently. One of the things about this area of the Treasure Coast is there are a number of beach access points, but some of them are hidden. And there are a number of good beaches. The ones that we typically visit will be the Treasure Shores Beach, which is just right down the road. That's about a 3-mile distance that we've just flown, and this is a very large, improved beach. And again, when the conditions are right, when the sand has been moved off, you can walk north about a half mile to a mile and have potential finding treasure, or you can walk south and have the same thing. Again, these beaches can be heavily sanded in, so unless you're there at the right time, the chances are you're not going to find much. But there's a large parking lot here. In the spring and in the summer, sometimes these parking lots will be full, but many times I've been here, especially in the winter, I'll be the only car in the parking lot. The further south from Treasure Shores is Wabasso Beach, which is one of the most famous treasure beaches where a lot of treasure has been found. Unfortunately, the city of Vero is renourishing this beach, which means they're dumping truckloads of sand on this beach to bring the sand back up. And that's bad for treasure hunters because it means your treasure is going to be buried even deeper. Further on down from Wabasso Beach is the Turtle Trail Beach Access. Each of these jumps that we're doing is about a 3-mile jump. And the Turtle Trail Beach Access has a small parking lot and no facilities, but I've had very good luck right here. In fact, I found a Spanish sword about right here, and I was with a group of people that found a real right here. But again, conditions were right, it was low tide, and we were able to dig down where we normally wouldn't be able to get. Now, when you think about detecting in the water, you cannot do it on the Treasure Coast because the state of Florida has leased the salvage rights to treasure salvers who are out in boats, and they own the rights from the low tide mark all the way out into the water. So you can detect the beaches all you want, but you cannot detect in the water. And if you get caught in the water with a metal detector, your detector will be seized and you will be fined. But like I say, Turtle Trail Beach Access is one of the better beaches for finding treasures. When you detect these beaches, in addition to detecting the shore, detect the high area of the sand up here. Now, Florida law does not allow you to detect any further than the heel of the dune, but a lot of times the treasure is going to be right there at that sand level at the heel of the dune. Further south on the Treasure Beach is J.C. Park, which is closer to the main area of Vero Beach. It's a very large park, at least for this part of Treasure Coast, with lots of parking, and it has a parking here on the front, parking here, and this is a good place to stop and have a picnic, but also to get out and search these beaches. These are very large beaches. Further on down is the Vero Beach. It almost connects to J.C. Park, has lots of parking here. Again, the problem is the city of Vero, because they want to make the beaches nice and pretty for the tourists, they have a tendency to put a lot of sand renourishment. And the problem with that is the first good winter storm blows all the sand away. Now when the sand blows away, it's bad for the tourists, but good for the metal detecting. Further down from the Vero Beach is the Sexton Beach, and this is the main beach where all the little shops are in downtown Vero Beach. And there are always cars here, and it's a little bit difficult to get parking here. This is the main tourist beach. This is one of the main tourist beaches, not so much a treasure beach, but it's a good beach to know about, and if you get hungry and need a sandwich, come up here, and there's shops on both sides and shops across the street here. Further on down, as you go south, you'll find a number of other beaches, and generally, depending on the weather, you'd stop at any of these beaches and you have a chance of finding treasure. This is the Riamar Beach Access. We'll go down to the South Beach Access.
South Beach, Vero Beach. It seems like every small town has their own South Beach. The South Beach access has another large parking lot with overflow parking, and it's a good place to go if you're looking for tourist and local and recent drops as well as potential treasure drops. Again, I can't say this too much. The best time to find treasure is going to be after a major storm when some of the sand cover has been removed. We'll go down and look at some other beaches further on south. On that long jump that we just took, any place that you see that you can pull over is a good place to metal detect. The chances are you're not going to find any recent drops, you're not going to find any tourist drops, and you're probably not going to find treasure unless the weather is particularly right. So we're down at the Pepper Beach. It has parking spaces. Further on down, we'll go to the South Jetty Park, which is on Hutchinson Island. And Hutchinson Island has been a good place to find Spanish cobs, although you do not want to be out here because the current is very strong, and you also want to be careful through here because the current is strong. But then once you get here, you'll get to the beach access, and Hutchinson Island has been known to be a good place to find treasures on the Treasure Coast. And then further south of Hutchinson Island is the Stuart, Florida public beach. And this is about as far south as the Treasure Coast goes, although treasure still washes ashore all the way down to Miami. There's no magic line that says treasure stops here, but if you're looking for Spanish treasure from the fleet wreck of 1715 and other gold coins and things that may have washed in, your best chance is going to be on the Treasure Coast beaches. And these are the beaches that we've just looked at. Now on the map it looks like that's a lot of beaches, but really from this point here all the way down to Stuart is only about 60 miles. Now it'll take you more than an hour to drive it, but just because of the traffic. It's not a lot of traffic, but it's beach traffic. It doesn't move quickly. But if you're here at the right time of year, and that's when after a major storm, when the sand's been washed out and you're on the right beach with a metal detector, your chances are pretty good of finding something. Now you may not find a gold coin, but you may find debris or other artifacts from the ships that wrecked out there. Now in the next segment, we're going to travel up north and look at the beaches around Daytona Beach and this Jacksonville, Florida area. Now that we've looked at the Treasure Coast beaches, which are right through here, we're going to go a little bit north and look at the beaches in the Daytona area and then north of that into the Jacksonville area. Let's take a look. The Daytona area beaches are world-famous beaches that are visited by millions of tourists every year. Daytona is a famous destination for spring break, where they get hundreds of thousands of spring breakers and the MTV crews set up there, and people all over the world see what goes on at Daytona Beach, and it does attract a lot of people. Daytona is also popular for Bike Week and for NASCAR races, and it brings a lot of people into the Daytona Beach area. A lot of them go out on the beach. What's unusual about the Daytona area beaches are two things. First of all, the sand is hard packed, and second, because the sand is hard packed, they allow cars to drive on the beach. So you have about 13 miles of beach where cars can drive and park. In fact, almost all the parking available near the beach is actually on the beach. You do have to pay to park on the beach, you have to pay to drive on the beach, and the access points to get on the beach will change daily depending on tide levels and how hard the sand is. When you start thinking about metal detecting on Daytona Beach, you do have to keep in mind the hard packedness of the sand, because if the sand is hard enough to hold up a car, it's also going to be hard enough so that if someone drops something, it's going to lay on the surface. It's going to be easy for that person to find it and pick it up. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to find treasures when you go metal detecting on Daytona Beach. It just means you have to be aware of a couple of things. First of all, you definitely have to be aware of the cars, motorcycles, and motorhomes that are driving up and down the beach. And second of all, you're probably going to have to get closer to the water in order to find anything. Now, as I zoom into Daytona Beach, you notice that I've zoomed into a parking lot here, and there are about 11 parking lots on Daytona Beach itself. Most of them will fill up early, but these parking lots are available. But like I said earlier, most people are going to drive and park on the beach, and in fact, in this image right here, you can see cars right here parked on the beach. Now, when you drive A1A, which is this highway here, there aren't many places where you can actually see the water due to all the high-rises. And that's good because these high-rises have all the tourists that come to visit Daytona Beach, and if you metal detect in front of some of these high-rises,
you have a pretty good chance of finding something. Now, people have pretty good luck when they go to Daytona when they metal detect around the Daytona Beach Pier. The Daytona Beach Pier is much more than a fishing pier. It is a restaurant entertainment complex, and it draws large crowds. One of the things you'll notice about Daytona Beach is the entire beach has a carnival-like atmosphere, and there'll be food carts and all kinds of things going on up and down the beach almost all the time. So if you're there during the months that are active, which are from March through November, you're going to see a lot of people on the beach. Again, the disadvantages are the cars on the beach, which means you do have to be careful when you're metal detecting. You don't want to be in the lanes that the cars are driving in. And the other thing you have to worry about is the hard-packed sand. Oh yeah, and there's one other thing, and that's the Atlantic storms can make the waves quite strong. But if you do come metal detecting on the Daytona Beach area, you definitely want to metal detect around this pier, because people tend to go to the restaurants and then stand on the edge of the pier, and they can drop things under or off the pier. They can be in the sand in this area right here. Daytona Beach itself extends further than just Daytona Beach. It goes almost all the way up to Ormond Beach. And that entire jump that we just made, any of the beaches down there have a chance of finding something. But you have better chances if you're metal detecting where the people are, and that's going to be in front of the hotels where people come and go down the beach and sometimes wear their jewelry. The Daytona Beach area is not one of my favorite metal detecting areas because of the density of the sand, the fact that cars are allowed on the beach, and the number of people that are on the beach and the types of crowds that are there. If you are planning to go to Daytona Beach, you want to make sure that you are aware of what's going on there the week that you go. For example, if you go during Bike Week, there may be hundreds of thousands of bikers up and down the beach, and that may be to your taste. It may not be. It'll be fairly loud during those types of weeks. But if you do go to Daytona Beach and you have a vehicle that you don't mind taking out in the sand, it can be a pleasant way to spend a day on the beach, actually in your car or in your motorhome. Further north of Daytona Beach is the Jacksonville, Florida area. We're going to zoom into the city pier at Jacksonville, Florida. The reason we do that is it has a large parking lot, and as with all beaches, a pier is a good tourist attraction. Tourists like to walk out on the pier. They like to hang over the pier, and sometimes when they do, they drop rings and jewelry and other things into the water. So hunting around the pier is always a good idea. The sand quality of Jacksonville Beach is not as soft or porous as sand in other parts of the state, but this particular beach is one of the closest beaches to the North Atlantic coast, so when visitors come down from New York, New Jersey, and other parts like that, this will be the first place that they visit. So the city beach itself is about 3 miles long. There's a 1 mile boardwalk, and metal detecting around that boardwalk can also be lucrative. There isn't a lot of parking, and you do have to be careful what time of year that you visit here, but if you're coming down from the northeastern states, this will be one of the first big beaches that you reach where you do have a chance of finding something. When you're metal detecting on the beaches of Florida, you can almost always find something if you're on the right beach, the right time of year, and the right day. And there are a few other things that you can do to almost always find something. Let's cover my top 10 tips for finding things every time you go to hunt.
Tip number 1. Start by choosing the right beach, one with plenty of targets to find. In the summer, hunt the popular tourist beaches. In the winter, hunt the snowbird beaches in South Florida. In the spring, hunt the spring break beaches. And after hurricanes, hunt the Treasure Coast beaches. Tip number 2. Make sure your detector is working properly and the controls are set correctly. Make sure the battery is fully charged and you have a backup battery. Make sure the inside the coil cover is cleared of sand. Tip number 3. Make sure you have the right kind of sand scoop. A long-handled sand scoop will save time, save your knees and your back. Tip number 4. Scout the beach before you start detecting. Determine the areas where the crowds have been on the beach and start your detecting there. Tip number 5. Begin detecting as soon as the beach crowds start to leave for the day. This gives you a better chance of finding recent drops, and being the first to detect the beach after the crowds leave is always a good move. Tip number 6. Find and detect along the towel and chair line where people have been sitting all day. When you start finding targets, stay on that line and do a circular sweep around each target. Tip number 7. Swing the detector coil slowly. It will work better this way, and you'll find more targets and deeper targets. Tip number 8. Keep the coil 1 inch above and parallel to the beach through the full swing. Swing flat and close to the surface to find more targets. Tip number 9. Wear quality headphones and know what your detector tones mean. Wind and waves can mask the tones from your detector, and headphones can help you find targets others will miss. Tip number 10. If unsure about a tone, always dig the target. Mixed metals and jewelry and rings can produce a pull tab tone and fool you. So if in doubt, dig the target, and you'll never know what you may have missed until you dig it up.
Now that you've seen the video, you've learned the basics of metal detecting Florida beaches. You've learned that you're going to need a good detector and a good scoop, but more importantly, you want to choose the right beach at the right time of year and the right time of day. If you do that, if you swing your coil slowly, keep it parallel to the beach, you have a very good chance of finding things on the beach. Now obviously in this video we couldn't cover everything, and that's why we have other videos that go into more depth. We have videos on finding treasures on the Treasure Coast, we have advanced metal detecting in Florida, we have water detecting, and other videos like this that you'll find on our website as well as Amazon. Thanks for watching. I'm Bill Myers. Hope to see you out on the beach finding treasures.